mean, I like it that wherever I go, it's a little bit like a parade. And it still is all these years later.
Yeah.
So wherever I go, people are like, hey, V, Vanessa, you all right?
So Vanessa, welcome to Audible. We're here to talk about your memoir, Vanessa Bares All. Now, to start with, there is a line in the blurb, which I don't think I've ever seen in an autobiography. It says, Vanessa's often wrong, but always relatable. So are you often wrong? In what ways are you often wrong?
Well, I think it really depends on your kind of attitude while reading or having the book read to you by me. But I think you might think it's a catalogue of terrible decisions made by me. So I definitely often have been wrong about many, many things. I think I've been an absolutely deplorably bad picker of chaps. And so you see me make a mistake, and then you see me make even worse mistakes, and then even more mistakes. So yeah, I've often been wrong, definitely.
And how does that fit with you also being an agony aunt? The idea that you're sometimes quite wrong.
I mean, I think it helps, actually. I think it really helps. I mean, at the moment, I'm single. I didn't mean to be. I didn't want to be. I don't like to be. I'd like to think, I've had it with that. I don't need any more of that. But unfortunately, that isn't how I feel, if I'm being honest. And I always am honest. But agony aunt-wise, I think it really helps because you know what people are going through. I mean, if you make a few terrible mistakes in your own life and you have a few, people treat you badly or betray you or be unfaithful to you, or you have big career disappointments and showdowns or difficult relationship with your mum, or all the sorts of things I've been through, I think it helps because instead of sailing through life and sort of slightly looking down on people who don't seem to have it all sussed, I'm one of the people who most definitely does not have it sussed.
Yeah. And you write about your Yiddish chorus growing up.
Yes.
What was that, and how did that kind of impact your upbringing to have all those opinions from such a young age?
It's quite a big deal, really. I suppose in a Greek tragedy, it's always the Greek chorus, and the Greek chorus is always rumbling along in every Greek tragedy, commenting on everything. So someone's sacrificed, they're commenting. There's a terrible flood, they're commenting. The king is murdered, they're busily commenting. Well, I didn't have any of those things happen in my childhood, but I did have a mum, a dad, 2 grandmas, a grandpa, aunties, uncles, and everybody else. And it would be something like this. So I'd say, I'm going to wash my hair. And my father would say, you're washing your hair? What are you washing your hair for now? We're just about to have dinner. We're having dinner, Valerie. We're having dinner. What is she washing her hair for? My mother would say, I don't know. Why are you washing your hair? You're washing it now. You shouldn't wash it. You've got a cold. You've had a cold. I don't want you sitting around the house with wet hair. And then one of my grandmas would be on the phone. One of them would come in. My grandpa would walk down. Well, she's washing her hair. She's washing it now. Isn't she going to a party on Saturday night? Why doesn't she wait till Saturday to wash her hair? Why is she? Anyway, her hair doesn't look as if it needs washing. It looks beautiful. You've got gorgeous hair. You've got terrible hair. You should wash it. There was always some kind of commentary going on the whole time. And now without them to say, what are you wearing that for? You're doing an interview for Audible. You're wearing a dress with red flowers all over it. What do you think that's a good idea? Won't you be cold? You haven't got any sleeves. Don't wear that. Wear a suit. Look more executive. Look less executive. Wear your pajamas. Isn't it Christmas? Wear your Christmas. Something like that.
Yeah.
It makes me feel terribly lonely and forsaken. Not to have all these people bossing me and having a view and commenting and wading in. I'm just meant to just go and do something on my own. In fact, lots of things, practically everything on my own. And it's shocking to me not to have them. So my Yiddish chorus, which wasn't necessarily a chorus of approval, but much more Alan Ayckbourn's chorus of disapproval, but I miss it. I miss it terribly. I miss it hundreds of times a day, every day.
Did it prepare you for all the opinions that flew around once you got into showbiz?
In a way, yes. And certainly for critical opinions. It's very, very well spotted. I don't think anyone's asked me that before. But certainly quite a lot of the opinions expressed by my Yiddish chorus ended up being echoed by the media in general, and particularly certain female journalists. And my mum had this real sort of eagle-eyed kind of stance on my weight from when I was the age of about 8, 9. And I was very slim and quite skinny and not at all interested in food. And she was so determined I wouldn't get any bigger. I had to get bigger. I was only 9. I couldn't stay a 9-year-old size for the rest of my life. So that was kind of technically impossible. That she watched and dieted me and, very much limited what I was allowed to eat. And it meant that the second I could eat without her supervision, I put weight on and put weight on. And then, of course, what did the journalists and commentators have to say about me? Oh, she's so fat. She's the woman who ate her audience. There'd be pictures of my bum on the front page of Heat magazine, Closer magazine, Reveal magazine, revealing watching my butt, spreading ever bigger and ever bigger over the front pages. And it kind of chimed in with what my parents had been saying. So did it prepare me? I suppose yes, in a way. You're quite right. Yeah.
Did it hurt more coming from your mum, the comments about food and your weight, or from the press and the tabloids?
I think it hurt more coming from my mum.
Yeah.
And it also stung and was embarrassing and humiliating coming from, total strangers.
Yeah.
But certainly I got famous in the 90s, the early 1990s, when it was just an absolute free-for-all. So when they called me, the woman who ate her audience, or said I had breasts like World War I barrage balloons, all of these comments you see I remember to this day, seared across my heart forever and ever. Some pretty terrible things were said about me and written about me.
Yeah.
And it seemed absolutely fine at that time. Nobody said, hang on a minute, that's not very nice, is it? The phrase, the idea of body shaming, no such thing.
Yeah.
I think people thought, your body is too big. Be ashamed. Be shamed.
Yeah.
You should be humiliated. How dare you come on TV, and I quote, in that state. How dare you be in that state, which just means over a size 14, I suppose.
Yeah.
And all it really made me feel like doing was eating more. That's the awful thing. You just feel terrible, you feel shamed, embarrassed, kind of like terribly self-conscious and unhappy about it. And what do you do? Well, if you're a drinker, you drink more. If you're a gambler, you go and gamble. If you're an eater, you sort of have another piece of pie to try to make yourself feel better. So it was a kind of very vicious circle all playing out in public, but very much underlined by my parents saying, you see, we told you, we said, don't eat the cake. Didn't we say? Didn't we tell you? For God's sake, stop that thing.
Do you resent that your mum started that for you?
I think it was awful for me, but I also think she didn't mean it nastily or unkindly. I think she had always felt very conscious about her own weight, which actually wasn't that big. She was about a size 14, 16, I suppose. She wasn't slim and skinny. I'm talking about the 60s and 70s when, women were, if they could possibly be, kind of androgynous. They looked a bit like Twiggy, very, very thin, flat-chested. She just wasn't that shape,
Yeah.
And I was kind of almost handed a weight problem, and which I don't think I would have had if I'd just been left to my own devices. I don't think I was a food obsessive at all. But when your mum's saying, Vanessa won't have the cake, she won't have the soup, we're giving her half a grapefruit, kind of making these pronouncements.
Yeah.
So I was perpetually in search of a couple of opal fruits. If you'd given me a Mars bar, I'd have thanked you and blessed you to this very day. I really mean it.
Yeah.
Do I resent it? It's not really resent it. I sort of wish it had been different, that's all. And certainly with my own girls, I tried not to do the same thing again.
Were there any good values that the Yiddish chorus and your parents instilled in you?
I think there were lots of good values. I think, families, the importance of family and, sticking together, solidarity, but also hard work was a big thing. Absolutely graft, toil. My dad was all about toil, really, really slogging away.
Is it a positive value?
Well, it's been quite useful to me because I did 12 years of, Radio 2 early breakfast, getting up at 3:20, on air at 4. As soon as it finished, running across the road, a couple of roads actually, to Radio London, doing the breakfast programme live from 7 till 10, 2 days a week, running down the back stairs, jumping on the back of a limo bike and whizzing across to This Morning and doing This Morning. And then I'd done, 3 jobs before 11 o'clock in the morning. So, I suppose if you hadn't had the idea of graft embedded in your soul, you might not fancy that all that much.
Yeah. And when you got into showbiz and the limelight, did that suit you? How did you find it at first?
Well, I still quite like it. I like it that wherever I go, it's a little bit like a parade. And it still is all these years later.
Yeah.
So wherever I go, people are like, hey, V, Vanessa, you all right? Go on, picture, come on, let me, come under my quite stinky armpit and let me squeeze you and let's have a picture, that kind of thing. Yeah. And also, I love what you do. My mum loves you. When my mum was dying in hospital, she listened to you and she loved the show and you meant the world to her. And when you used to say lots of love at the end, she used to think you were talking to her and lovely things.
Yeah, lovely.
Positive reinforcement that people wish they had, I do get all the time. People who don't like you, obviously they exist. They don't tend to come up to you in the street and say, I don't like you. That doesn't really happen. At least it doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
So in general, as I just walk along, I'm going out to get a pound of apples or something, some nasal decongestant spray, and it turns into a little bit of a fiesta. And I have a chat with this one and a chat with that person, and somebody else wants a picture, and I like it. I'm not shy and retiring. I don't wish no one ever noticed me. And it would be pathetically, transparently a lie if I said, oh, I don't like it. I just, what I want to do is just modestly go around with nobody noticing me. Of course I don't. I love it. So that side of it I like. There's a big downside. And the downside is, that obviously people's lives don't go just on a lovely, beautiful upward curve at all times. And when horrible things happen in your life, you end up plastered all over the papers, and your horrible sadness or your bereavement or your embarrassment or your illness or whatever it is there, and it's kind of entertainment for people along with their cereal, their Frosties and their Ready Brek in the morning, you know. And it can be hurtful, embarrassing and shaming and, all kinds of things. So I would say that fame is really delightful when you're going through a good slice of life and everything's all just, chugging along in a lovely or upwardly mobile, positive way. It's great. When you come through one of life's real blips, it really isn't very nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of... it just makes it all very public. So if something's genuinely heartbreaking and your heartbreak is on the front pages for everyone else to see, it gives it an added dimension of misery.
Yes.
Which isn't nice.
Yeah. How has fame changed? Would you say it's changed?
I don't know if it's changed, but I just think if you've been sort of allocated that sort of level of fame, you just are famous and that's it. And it really doesn't link up to what you're doing or not doing, and you're kind of stuck with it forever, really. And so you might as well enjoy it.
And within the industry, was the upbringing to be a good wife? Did that ever mean that you turned down career opportunities that maybe if you'd known that your husband was not being a good husband, you would have gone in different directions?
Yes. It does.
Yeah.
Particularly, are you thinking of the Hollywood story?
The LA.
Yeah, the LA story. I mean, that was just, I still don't really, one of the things about writing a true story about your own life is there are no real kind of explanations for things that happen.
Yeah.
You can only kind of theorize about, like, well, hang on, wait, this happened to me. What was really happening there? What happened to me? And so basically, I'm by this time I've got the Vanessa show going on, and I've got a newspaper column in the Daily Mirror, and I'm working hard. I've got a radio show I think as well, and I'm busy and exciting, and it's all going really well. So I got flown out to Hollywood. So I was there. I was staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I saw the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I was schlepped around to various agents, including CAA, which was the absolute hottest agents at the time. Yeah. And I was kind of paraded around for these 2 days. And they said that they would like to offer me a signing fee of really an enormous amount of money. So obviously I phoned home to speak to my husband. And he just said, how much more famous do you need to be? I'll never forget it. And it wasn't about that. A, it hadn't even been my idea.
Yeah.
B, it wasn't about how much more famous do you need to be. It wasn't anything to do with that. It was to do with, imagine going to bloody LA for a bit. And,
it's an experience.
Yeah. And also my mum had already died. She died at the age of 57. My dad had sort of scarpered off with some other woman. So my kind of the framework of my family life wasn't what it had been before. And I just thought, cool, it could be a really exciting experience. And I knew it would probably fail because most British presenters who try to make it in America fail.
Do they?
Yeah. I think most really successful British presenters try. They almost all fail and come back again.
Yeah.
But at least they try. And also they get paid loads to try. And also how exciting, to live in LA for once in your life. It just would have been great.
Yeah.
Anyway, my then husband said, how much more famous do you need to be in this horrible way that made me feel like, maybe I do only want to do this because I want to be a big deal, which isn't nice or something. And literally, I never spoke about it again. Just went home and got on with work, and that was the end of it.
So writing about it, was that the first time you'd really addressed that had happened?
I think so, yeah.
Because he broke up with you, he left you not long after.
He left me about a year and a half later.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help thinking, well, if you were going to leave me anyway, why didn't we all just go there? We would have had all that money and it would have been an experience, and then you could have left. And even then, and you could have said you were leaving because I'd insisted on uprooting you and, forcing you to requalify, and I was a terrible person. You could have done it like that, but he just didn't.
And so that marriage ended.
Yeah.
And you then had to have your first non-traditional Jewish Friday night dinner, which was a massive moment for you because, there wasn't the man there to lead it and to kind of like own that. So how did that moment, your divorce, him leaving, and then that Friday night dinner affect your views on your religion?
Well, I couldn't hold the Friday night dinner responsible for changing my views on my religion exactly. It's just that Friday night's a traditional family night in Jewish families. You don't go out. For the rest of the world, everyone goes out for a big Friday night. Jewish families, you usually go to your grandma or your mum, or you stay in and you have, you make a blessing to welcome the Sabbath, and then you have dinner, and that's how it goes. And that's how it had gone my entire life. Been my grandpa, my dad, my husband. And then suddenly it was just me and two little girls in this house. I felt like my heart was physically broken, not just like emotionally or notionally broken. It felt like I had to go to sort of get the blood to keep kind of pumping across, and I'm not exaggerating. It really, really felt like it wouldn't just go into the next chamber. I had to sort of wait because I couldn't really breathe properly. I couldn't sleep properly. I couldn't just lie in a bath. I was just shocked and heartbroken to the absolute like hell of an extent, really. And so it was just an absolutely horribly difficult time. And this first Friday night, it was just me and the girls in this kind of large, vast dining room. And the bit where the prayers should have happened, it's always the man who says them, the father, the husband, and there was just no one there. And it was just an overwhelming thing. And I ended up just bundling them all into this, all of us into the sitting room and watching TV and eating off a tray in front of the telly. But that wasn't what I was brought up to do, and it wasn't what it felt right to do. And then I got a phone call from the synagogue, and they said, hello, we believe your husband has left. And I said, yes, that's right, thinking they would say, is there any help? Would you like us to send anyone over or something? And they said, can you still afford to pay the fees? And I thought that was pretty rubbish, really.
Yeah.
And so I've been much less, it's not about the religion, but I've been much less kind of a part of the fabric of it since then.
The organisation.
Yes, I haven't really gone in for it much since then. Because I just felt that wasn't right, and I felt pretty sort of unsupported, I'd say. Yeah.
It's quite a strong. It's quite a strong moment, a strong like bad taste in your mouth for it to make you change such a lot of what you'd been brought up with as well. It's such a
I'd never been religious, but I don't at all. I'm not at all religious.
Tradition.
But I'd always kind of gone along with
the
traditions. But I suppose if you marry the good doctor that your grandma chooses for you, and then he turns out to behave in the way that he behaved, you're going to reject quite a lot of it, really, aren't you?
Yeah. You mentioned your girls there and how important it was to be a good mother. So there's two things I want to ask. One, what was a big thing you wanted to do differently to your parents? And two, what are you most proud of your girls for?
What I wanted to do differently from my parents was I wanted to love them unconditionally. I didn't want to look at them every time I saw them, as my mother did to me, and always look as if they were a bit disappointing. They hadn't really measured up. They weren't quite right. If only they just were a bit different somehow, thinner in my case, kind of more serious. Than my parents always wanted me to be very sort of politically serious. They just wanted me to be different. Just me being me was just not ever what they wanted. And I didn't want to be that kind of a mother. And luckily, I didn't even, once I had them, I had no intention of being that. I just loved them to pieces. I just adored them. And whatever they were good at, I loved. And if they weren't, I thought it was probably something pathetic. So if they couldn't skip, I didn't say, oh, if only you could skip.
Yeah.
I say, skipping, who needs it? Everyone can skip. You don't need to bother with that. I didn't feel that I needed to push them and shove them and make them feel that I was disappointed in them, because I wasn't. I never have been. I think they're great. I really think they're great. And what am I proudest of? Well, I think they're fantastic mothers themselves. They just love their kids in a loving, gentle, enthusiastic, sweet, patient kind of a way, and I love it. And so I'm very proud of them both, yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that you've been a bad picker, but there is someone who you would pick if you had the choice, Jeff Goldblum.
Yes.
What makes Jeff Goldblum your ideal man?
Well, you might say it's because I don't know him that well. If I knew him better, I might not choose him. But I mean, I just superficially at any rate.
Yeah.
He was on the bed with me on the Big Breakfast, and he was just, I mean, he can play the piano, he can paint, he's read all sorts of, wonderful parts of literature, he can quote it, he's handsome, he's funny, he's clever, he's incredibly quick thinking, he's very sort of charming, he's incredibly seductive, I think he's handsome, I just think he's wonderful.
Yeah. Is that what you're looking for ideally?
That's all I want.
If people can get in touch with
major
that.
Hollywood A-lister who's a genius. That's all I really want.
And what has the response been like to this book, the audiobook version on Audible?
Well, it's been amazing because I've been getting DM after DM every day. I get probably 5 or 6 DMs a day from people saying, I've listened to you, I've listened to your Audible, I've listened to your audiobook. I don't want it to stop. I wanted to carry on. And lots of people saying things like, well, they're used to my voice after all these years. They've listened to me on the radio for 30 years and seen me on the TV. And the idea that I'm reading them the story, my own life story, or telling them my own life story, they really do seem to love it. So I've been very, very touched by that, very, very warmed by the warmth that's been coming to me from people who seem to like listening to it.
And you have said that you go out every single night to avoid being at home on your own. Any good plans for tonight?
Yes.
What are your good plans?
Yes, I'm going to a dinner party in E3.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, and it might be good. Who knows? There might be some incredibly good-looking, unattached, debonair, charming. Tonight could be the night.
I can just feel it.
Could be.
Well, Vanessa, thank you so much.
Thank
it was
you.
a glorious listen to your book and really great to chat to you.
Thank you for having me.